Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tea with April. I like that, the Tea with April. You see, yes, you see
The big
my
A. I see the
the
big
big
A, the
A,
mighty
yes,
A.
yes, it's my teacup. I'm so happy to be with you guys this Thursday afternoon, sipping some tea, and we might knock the pot over with our special guest today. Oh, I love the hearts. Love you back. My name is April Ryan. I'm the Washington Bureau Chief and White House Correspondent for Black Press USA, and also the newest host here at the Contrarian with the Tea with April on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And today I am so honored to have someone who hits the intersection of economics, race, as well as government. The former mayor of New Orleans, Marc Morial, who also happens to be the president and CEO of the National Urban League. Hello, Marc Morial. How are
Hey,
you?
April, I'm so excited to be with you. And first of all, congratulations on this
Thank you.
new endeavor, another
Yes.
addition to your portfolio of communications assets. Very excited, and I just want to thank you for a long and illustrious career as a member of the White House Press Corps. Certainly, and the old radio, Black News Radio, and
Yeah.
video, and you've been
Yeah.
in so many places, right?
So many
American
places and
Urban,
spaces.
American Urban,
Yes. Yeah.
and you really, really, I think, have been a pioneer on the White House Press Corps for many, many years,
Yeah.
and opened the door and paved the way, but also, I think, stood up, were strong, not afraid to ask sometimes the difficult questions. Being in that White House press room can be intimidating.
It sure can
Uh,
be.
you can, to some extent, say, "Let me just sit here and go along," but you're there to ask, tough and difficult questions. I'm reminded always of the late great Mal Good.
Mm.
Or you knew he was a friend of my father's.
Yeah.
I met him as a very, very young, I guess a young 10 or 11 year old. I remember he was tall, and my father said, "Mal Good, represents us at the United Nations." And
Yes.
Mal Good, working. I mean, he was a tall guy. He had a booming voice, and
Yes.
those pioneers, of those days, and there's certainly many, but you're standing, in the breach on the shoulders of all of them. So, congratulate. Always good to chop it up with you. Uh, talk a little truth. Uh,
Yeah. A lot of
but,
truth and sip some tea.
yeah, spill some
Mhm.
tea.
So listen, Mark Morial, this is a great time to talk. There's so much going on. This is a newsy moment. I want to say hello to everyone. We see people coming in from Maryland, my home state. I'm on the porch, a porch here. Also the Adirondacks in New York and Colorado. But let's get to the news. Tell all your friends. And Rain Pryor, Richard Pryor's daughter, I see you. Thanks, my sister, for joining in. So listen, there's a whole bunch of things we need to talk about. We have a list here, and I want to start with the issue that's been in the news the most right now. This debate on Medicaid, okay? And also these work requirements. It's almost like welfare, these work requirements that they're trying to pass or trying to figure out what to do in the House. Republicans are trying to grapple with this. What are your thoughts about this?
So let me
Because
give
we
you
know,
let me give you some
yeah.
facts. First of all, I think it is absolutely inhumane,
Mm,
to take away people's health care. Health care, you either believe it's a human right, you either believe it's a civil right, or you don't believe it's a human or a civil right. And only when one faces a difficult health challenge, or a member of their family faces a difficult health challenge, and you see the bills and the co-pays and the medicines, does it really hit you how essential health care is in
yeah.
a modern society. Now, let's talk about Medicaid. The Medicaid program, which was part of Johnson's great society efforts in the 1960s, was that program to provide health care to people who were economically disadvantaged.
Yes.
And today it does a number of things to help families with children, seniors who need nursing care. It's a very successful, one of the most successful safety net programs. It's really a partnership between the federal government and the states. It's administered, unlike Medicare, it's administered by the states.
Mhm.
And the states play a very important role. And there's good to that and bad to that, because as we know, there are a number of southern states that never expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. All that to
Yeah.
talk about these work requirements. It's a distraction. 80+% of the people on Medicaid do work or they're retirees. Period, full stop. A number of the other folks who are not working
Hmm.
are either disabled,
Right.
they may be in a transition from one job to another, or something of that sort.
Right.
So the suggestion is that Medicaid is a program for freeloaders.
Right.
That's false. It's a big bald-faced lie, and I wish more members of Congress, more people in the commentary space would say that. Get the facts right now. Most people who have Medicaid are in fact people who are working or they are retirees. So you're really, really trying to create a false issue when
Mm.
you add work requirements to a safety net program. Why, if someone, why should these programs be tied? It's distrustful.
Hmm.
The suggestion is that everyone that has Medicaid is a freeloader. Everyone that has food stamps or the SNAP program is somehow a freeloader. And it is harsh and it
Yeah.
is callous. Are there people that, yeah, there's people that freeload on tax breaks too.
Yeah.
There's people who freeload and take advantage of the tax code that have a lot of money. So let's trust but verify, trust the American people.
Wow. Trust but
In this
verify.
process,
Yeah.
it's okay to have a verification system, but we wouldn't have the data
Yeah.
if the Center for Medicaid Services didn't know who, in fact, was working with Medicaid. Then, number two, just the fundamental issue is don't cut Medicaid. And you already see the pushback coming even from red state constituents against senators and members of Congress. There's no reason to cut this except the zeal
Hmm.
and the passion that some of them have for creating tax breaks for billionaires to try
So
to transfer wealth up the economic ladder.
So one of our viewers said something. They're going to make grandma get out of the nursing home bed to go work, and that's essentially what's happening. But and when you talked about trust but verify, and also it's a false issue, it hits on this piece that people are not talking about. The fact that a lot of people who are on Medicaid are working, as you said, 80%, but they're working these low wage jobs that don't have insurance. So, i.e., that's why they're on Medicaid, correct?
Medicaid is, in effect, a subsidy program
Hmm.
for employers who pay low wages and don't provide health care. Who's really, we subsidize low wage jobs. How do we subsidize them? I mean, the taxpayer subsidizes them. Medicaid subsidizes their health care. Section 8 housing vouchers
Hmm.
subsidize their rents.
Yes.
SNAP or food stamp subsidizes uh, their subsistence eating.
Hmm.
We have created a system. If people's wages had kept pace with inflation, if we had a reasonable living wage versus this minimum wage, then more people would be able to afford the things they need. If we
Yeah.
had, and this is where the system, the public private system, has
Yeah.
really, really screwed people, is if we had been building affordable housing over the last 20 years, more people would be able to afford a home to buy or a home to rent. I mean, the policies have basically been a bad deal for the American people. And at this moment, I'm not in the mood to talk about, well, how can we compromise? I'm in the mood to stand up for what's right and stand
Mm.
up for principle and stand up for the locked out and the left out. We have a legislative conference taking place, our 22nd legislative policy conference taking place. We released two reports today. One was a 5-year George Floyd report. I want to talk to you about that. The
And
second
let's
one,
let's talk about that a little later on, yeah, because that's
yeah,
really
yeah, and then
important.
we
Yeah.
we released the Main Street tax plan. So uh, the reason why this is relevant is because we say if you really want to do something for working people, don't touch Medicaid, don't touch SNAP, don't touch Section 8, and give Americans making less than $100,000 a year a 50% tax cut,
Hmm.
a 50% tax cut. 85% of American people make
Hmm.
less than $100,000 a year.
Say that again. Say that again.
85% of the American people have household income of less than $100,000. And when you talk about two family households, 60% bring in less than $100,000 a year. See,
And
we pretend now some markets the numbers may be a little different. The Washington D.C. market where you have a lot of white collar jobs, but generally you go to a place like Birmingham, Little Rock, Memphis. You go to a
Selma,
place like Montgomery,
Selma.
Selma, you name it. People are hustling.
Yeah.
They're working in jobs that don't pay a lot of money, and we got to confront. And what I'm trying to do in this debate, which seems to sometimes avoid the facts. Let's talk about the real situation
Yeah.
for American people, those that are making less than $100,000 a year. Let's talk about the fact that 82% of people on Medicaid already work or they're retirees. Let's confront that some of these proposals are weapons of mass deception and distraction.
So, everybody, this is an important conversation. We're going to talk about a lot of hot topics. I need you to tell all your friends to join in. Come on. We are knocking the pot over, the teapot with the tea with April here on the Contrarian. Mm, on Substack. But as you talk about jobs, we've got a lot of people on here talking about jobs. And we know that the latest numbers came out and Black women are at the lowest rung. But I want to get to that. I want you to put a pin in that for a minute. But I want to go over to something one of our viewers just said. They said, "What about Walmart? Walmart is a violator." They're saying of a lot of this, and now we're hearing a lot of the issues of insurance and pay, and now we're hearing that they're raising prices as well in the stores because of tariffs, etc., and also immigration issues with the president trying to close off the southern border.
I think it's fair to ask any company, and I'm not sure what the Medicaid threshold income is. There's a threshold income. So if the company pays them less than that and doesn't provide health insurance, they may be entitled to Medicaid. Now, in some cases, may be a better insurance deal than some employer provided healthcare plans.
Mm,
And so I think this is a fair question. Uh, I'm not schooled on the specifics of this actual issue, but I think it's a fair question. But here's the basics the basics are that these programs subsidize low wage jobs because we have to provide this because people cannot afford it.
yes.
And a society with the economic success we've had, the society with the wealth we have, the society with the technological advancements should not leave people in poverty, should not leave people struggling. To me, that's a value proposition, right?
Yeah.
Does the country, but I always say to people who say, well, why do we have, if folks were making more in wages, look, we don't pay teachers enough, right?
Mhm.
Most people that work in restaurants who are servers are tipped. They make a sub minimum wage. So
Mhm.
they've got to basically try to make it on tips. So there are lots of places. And this is the thing, April. The economy of today
Yeah.
for the average person maybe is tougher than the economy of 30 years ago
Oh, yes.
or the economy of 40 or 50 years ago when our parents and that generation, they were working, but they could afford a home, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't have to spend more than 30% of their income. Too many Americans today are spending up to 50% of the money they take in on
Yeah.
housing.
And, you know, anything below minimum wage is poverty. And in some instance, minimum wage, if that's just your only job, that is poverty. Am I correct?
And so many people are working double jobs. They got side hustles. They're doing more than one thing. It's certainly the case for many young
Yeah.
women, many young Black women who
Hmm.
are trying to do multiple things. I know many young mentees, young women I know, they got a day job, they got a side hustle, they got a second side hustle. They're trying to do a multiplicity of things. And I admire the industriousness. I
Yes.
admire the drive. I admire the determination. But boy, you get worn out
Mm, yeah.
uh, trying to do that on a consistent basis. And this is a commentary on the American economy.
And you just spoke of the hustles, all the part-time job, the other hustle, this hustle. For some communities, they call it entrepreneurship, but for us, we call it the hustle.
Oh,
But
the
let's yeah, it's there is a difference. But here is another piece as we're talking about jobs. Let's go into those job numbers. Let's go into the fact that Black women are on the bottom rung when white women stayed the same. There is such a polar opposite dynamic here in America, particularly in
we
this
really need
anti
we
DEI
really
time.
need to look into this recent number that's come out, which is
Mm,
the large number of Black women being laid off in March, I believe, of this year, and why this is the case. And I sense that it is because of the attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And anecdotally, I know a number of, again, young women, college educated, some without college, who all of a sudden found themselves out of a job, in the last 6 months. And we need to unpack that. And we should probably, I think it'd be great to get some economists like Valerie Wilson or Bernie Anderson. There are many of them, Dr. Darity. Get some of these folks on to talk a little bit about what's inside these numbers. I saw those numbers and I was shocked and
mm.
disappointed at these numbers because Black women had made great strides since George Floyd. We today talked about what companies had done. There was a surge in hiring, after the death of the killing of
Sure.
George Floyd.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're losing that ground. We're
Mm.
losing that ground and we're losing it, and there's an assault on it coming from the 47th president and his administration.
So, two things with that. There's an assault on it, and it's so interesting. All of this is happening with Black women when we laid to rest the former labor secretary in the Clinton administration, Alexis Herman. You were at the funeral yesterday, so was I. Very dear woman, Black woman, the first woman to head the Women's Bureau under Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter was president, and then during the Bill Clinton years, she wound up being the labor secretary. She was appointed and she was nominated and confirmed as the labor secretary of the United States. She worked so hard for women. And now to see these numbers attacked, particularly after George Floyd's death 5 years ago, almost at that anniversary, and then also because of a strategic deconstruction in the workplace against women, particularly women of color or Black women, exactly.
Look, Alexis Herman was one of a kind.
Mm,
She was smooth. She had great wisdom, insight, and charm. She served as vice chair of the National Urban League Board for 24 years. So she was on
wow.
the board that hired me.
Yeah.
She was a voice in our boardroom for years, and also a private advisor. Uh,
Mm,
I remember story first time I got elected mayor, I came up to D.C.
mhm.
Clinton was president, and Alexis was working in the White House. And Alexis invited me over to the White House to go have breakfast at the White House, I guess, cafeteria. They call it the White House mess.
The mess, yes.
So I went over there, and of course, I'm eating breakfast over there. I'm gonna order me some grits, right?
Oh
I'm like,
boy.
grits out. They brought these grits out. I said, Alexis, these are instant grits. She said, damn.
You ate grits in the White House. Oh my
said, I
God.
said, I said, Alexis, I thought Clinton was from Arkansas. They got to do better. She said, yeah, baby, this ain't, this ain't no good, right? I mean, they were instant grits. You know how those instant grits are. You can an authentic grits eater can tell fake from real. But she was always during my time as mayor, during my time as president of National Urban League, just a force. She
Yes.
had incredible wisdom,
Yes.
insight. People
Yes.
respected her. Everyone wanted
Yes.
her opinion. And
Yeah.
she was so generous in mentoring
Yes.
so many people. I
Yes.
mean, she mentored people like Siobhan, Arline Bradley, and of course,
The head of
Mignon
the National
Moore.
Council of
And,
Negro Women.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Mignon Moore
Yes.
and Donna Brazil and Yolanda Caraway, and so many, Leah Daughtry, so many of these women were mentored by Alexis. I mean, she was a big sister. She was
Yeah.
an IT, you know, she was a mother, and she also was one of those persons who she had this incredible career in politics and government, and then very easily navigated into a corporate role as a director at
Oh
MGM,
yeah.
Cola and Cummins Engine. You know, I just think she was you know, a one of a kind personality. I'm going to miss her greatly. And, you know, it's also for me a special. She is from Mobile, went and attended Xavier University.
Yeah.
So she had a long-standing relationship with
With
Xavier.
New
And so,
Orleans. Yeah.
you know, that's our hometown,
Yeah.
New Orleans, great university, now celebrating its 100th anniversary.
Yeah. She will be missed. I will tell my story about Alexis Herman later, but I will say this. You talked about grits in the White House mess. Guess what? And thanks, guys, for saying this is great to see me here. I'm here. I'm planted. Tell your friends to come over because we're spilling some more tea. I'm drinking dandelion tea along with fenugreek and what else? Soursop. That's my tea blend right now. But listen, you said something so interesting. You said you said about the grits. What you don't know, guys, is Marc Morial says the number one product that Black people buy. What is it, Marc Morial?
It's grits. It's what we over-index in the purchase of grits. I mean, we're black people. I think we're 50% of the purchasers, and you know, Woodhouse doesn't have, you know, because they're quick, they're easy, and they're cheap.
Well, yeah, my daughter likes them a lot. And what's the second item? What's the second item that Black people purchase?
I think it may be. I mean, I tell you some items that are high up there, fashion items. So black women over-index in, you know, hair products, makeup,
Yes.
things like that, and over-index in terms of spending per person or
Okay.
spending per capita. But then also, I bet we probably over-index in Tide.
Yeah, because of the brand awareness, right?
Your
That's
mama had it, you got it. Your
yeah.
grandmother
So
had it, you got it.
and so this kind of goes into this report that you came out with today as we're leading into the George Floyd fifth anniversary. Can you believe it's 5 years?
I know
I
it's
can't
been
believe.
5. Wow.
Yeah. So you came out. Tell me about this report that
Well, we looked at
you were
two things,
highlighting earlier.
and our team, our research team at the National Urban League Washington Bureau, along with our equitable justice team, along with our communications team, when we started thinking about George Floyd, we said, you know what? I said we need to speak to the moment with some facts, with some research, and with some specificity. So we looked at two things. We looked at the arc of police reform
Yes.
because George Floyd was a moment where he was killed because that officer had his knee on George Floyd's neck. It was an act of violence against George Floyd. And then we looked at corporate commitments, 65 billion in corporate commitments towards racial justice, to try to get a sense of where are we 5 years later. I think on the police reform effort, you saw progress. Kristen Clark did an outstanding job at the Department of Justice as head of the Civil
Civil
Rights.
rights division.
You
Yeah.
had 12 police departments, set pattern and practice investigations. They investigated prisons and jails. She convicted some 180 officers. They basically did their job. And we came up with our own blueprint. We love blueprints, our 21 Pillars blueprint, which impacted and influenced public policy. Some states like Maryland, a number of cities made reforms. There were lots of momentum on the police reform front, and there was aggressive opposition to police reform from some police unions, from some conservative commentators. Now, the big threat is the Trump administration walks in, and the first thing they do, one of the first things they do is freeze all civil rights investigations. And that is a damaging step because it sends a message that you can get away with murder. You can get away with lawlessness. You can get away with unconstitutional policing. You can get away with corruption. We're not going to do anything about it. Uh, the second thing we did is look at the 65 billion in racial justice commitments. It's harder to track, but I think people know that with the Trump executive orders and with the threats against major corporations, there have been adjustments. There have been changes, and people have retrenched. Some have completely retrenched. Some have slightly retrenched. And then there's that collection of companies that stayed strong, stayed firm, continue to do what they do. What I would say is I'm extremely disappointed in those that have retrenched
Mm.
because they're doing it in the face of fear. They're doing it in the face of threats. They're doing it because somehow they see Freddy Krueger, King Kong, and Godzilla coming down the road. And the threats and the leveraging by the new Trump administration, the regulatory power of the FCC, FTC, and the Department of Justice, trying to leverage companies to backtrack on equal
Mhm.
justice commitments and equal opportunity
Right.
commitments is a troubling sign. I've
Mhm.
said to major American corporate leaders, look, if you play that game today, what will you do when the president who comes in and says, I'm going to use the same leverage to force you to do diversity, equity, and inclusion, to force you to make commitments to equal opportunity? I said, you start playing with fire and you get burned.
So you're going down that line of what everyone is hearing about right now, these boycotts, if you will, of certain stores. Target, let's say Target. Pastor Jamal Bryant out of Atlanta is working on that, and it's made an impact. There's a debt. They've cried out. But also, in the midst of this, we are watching these stores suffer from tariffs and the impact from migrants. And that doesn't even have anything to do, well, that
Well,
did
it's
that
a
play
combination
into this George
of,
Floyd data that you just received?
well, I think the George Floyd data on the corporate commitment side is very difficult to put together.
Mm,
Because a lot of companies have not necessarily been transparent. So
wow.
we use publicly available data. We use commitments that people have made. I think even some that have remained committed have made cosmetic changes, have changed names of programs, they've dropped a program here or there. But some of them have maintained most of what they do, right?
Mhm.
You have some who are saying, well, I'm going to continue to quote unquote contribute, support HBCUs, support civil rights organizations, but don't put my name in the paper. Don't
Really?
put my name on any. In other words, I want to do it. Now, I tell people who say, "Well, are you disappointed with that?" You know, in the old days, companies made contributions and didn't want any credit. Then
Mhm.
things shift, and people want more credit than sometimes is even deserved for
Yeah.
making contributions. So, if the pendulum swings in the other direction, but the commitments remain, the only question is, will the commitments remain over time? And 65 billion sounds. I'll never sneeze at 65 billion, but we have a $30 trillion economy, and 65 billion over a period of 4 to 5 years is not, in the main of things, an astronomical. It's a significant, but not an astronomical sum of money.
Mm. So, um, in the midst of all of this, you've got this data that's showing that they're pulling back. We've got these boycotts going on. What does it look like, particularly as Black people are make up, as you say, almost $2 trillion worth of spending in this economy? What does that look
Well,
like?
I think it looks like many people feel that being intelligent and thoughtful and selective about where they spend money is the way to go. And I think households and organizations, I think, have to be thoughtful. I mean, it's a leverage power we do have, as a community, but it also you can't boycott everybody, right? Because people have to eat, people have to live. People also, sometimes you spend money with a particular gas station because it's convenient. You buy
Mhm,
groceries at a particular store because it's on its way home from work.
mhm.
All that to say is we're in a moment, April, where everyone has to be in the fight, in the game.
Yes.
We're working hard at the National Urban League, not only to activate Black people, but to build multiracial coalitions.
Yeah.
We had leaders from the Hispanic and Asian communities with us today. We
Mhm,
had Common Cause with us today at our annual conference. We're
mhm.
working hard to activate on that level, to bring the Black community in concert with others. And we're not naive about it. It is not that we're going to agree on all issues. It's that on the issue of inclusion, on diversity, on access, the closed door impacts lots of communities. In fact,
Yeah,
if you take it, it impacts the majority of the American people,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
this is why. this moment. So we can't back off. We can't back away from the commitment or from holding people accountable to be committed.
Now, one thing with the DEI programs, the anti DEI programs in these places, be it Target, be it Walmart, be it Amazon, and some other stores, these are just the big three that we know of, that we hear about a lot. Their Black Accelerator programs have been pulled, and people don't know about that. The Black Accelerator programs are programs where they bring in Black companies, Black businesses to get on it, to help them work to get on their shelves. And they've eliminated those.
So,
Yes, sir.
what I have encouraged people to do is if you have an accelerator program, don't push the Black people out. If you have to include other small businesses, if you have to widen the number of
Mhm.
seats at the table, do that. But don't cancel the program.
Yeah.
Just say if you're a small business and you're first generation, you're a small business and you've never had an opportunity like this before. These programs were designed for Black businesses who never had a shot. Well, are there other businesses that have
Mhm.
never had a shot? I say probably so. Yes, it's the case. Expand these programs, make them emerging business programs. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Don't eliminate your commitment to this. And this is what I've encouraged. In fact, I had a conversation today with a business leader on this very, very point.
Mm, mm.
So we are gonna, April, I've got to hop inside
Yeah.
back to our
Yeah.
conference for something. And I'm
But
on
here's
I'm
what
on you
here's
to
I
spill
want
the
you to
tea
give us some
whenever you
hope,
want.
though. I want you to
Huh?
give us some hope. Give us some
Well,
hope.
here's the hope. We have been through tough times before as a nation and as a people. And we will get through tough times as a nation and as a people. However, we won't do it if people are silent, if they're checked out, if they wallow in despair and hopelessness. We've got to give people hope because, notwithstanding the challenges we face, we have assets, we have resources, we have the wherewithal to fight back. And what this fight is for quality of life, for
Yeah.
respect and fairness, for a democratic system that works for everyone. So appreciate you. I'm a hop, and congratulations once again on this.
Thank-
And bring me back whenever you want
Oh,
to
we
talk
got a
about
lot of hearts on you,
whatever
so I
you
think
want.
I think you're coming back. We got a lot of hearts on you.
I'm coming
Marc
back.
Morial, the
Thank
president
you.
and CEO of the National Urban League. Thank you. You're my number one. You were the first. You were my
All right.
first on
Thanks.
the T with April. Guys, thank you for joining
God
me.
bless you.
And all
Thank
you
you.
got to do is press the X. You can get off. So
Okay.
all
Thank
of
you.
us are all, yes, there you go. All of us are technology challenged in some instances, but I'm so thankful that you joined me today. We're going to do this. Sit out with me. Come out and sit with me every Thursday at 5 on your drive home or something, or when you're home after you finish, the work day, and just sip a cup of tea with me. We knocked the pot over. With Marc Morial. We knocked the pot over. He gave us a lot of information. Thank you guys for joining. 5 o'clock every Thursday with the Contrarian, the Tea with April. Guys, love you. Thank you. We got a lot more reporting to do. Next week, we got a big conversation coming up. You don't want to miss this one. Next week, you know what next week is. It's a big anniversary. There's a lot of rumors. We want to address those rumors. A lot of rumors about a big anniversary, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is behind it. Kind of giving you a tease for next week. Thank you so much for being with me on my first show. I'm so excited and so happy. Guys, take care, drive safely, and see you next week. Bye bye.